All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here to resume our Thinking Talmudist series. We are on the bottom of 31b in Tractate Kiddushin, and we are in the middle of, I think this is the fourth installment of the child's obligation to the parents. We know that there's a requirement in the Torah for a child to honor his father and mother and to revere his mother and father. So how do we understand those? We went through many discussions over the past 3 weeks on those topics. Now we are going to talk about who's responsible to pay for the parents for the fulfillment of that mitzvah. So the previous brisa stated that a child must supply the parents with food and drink. The Gemara now seeks a clarification. They inquired. Now we're on the top of 32a. So if you have Safaria, 32a on top, and you will have in Tractate Kiddushin, you will have exactly what we're holding. Mi shel mi is the question. From whose assets are the needs of the parents provided? The Gemara presents a dispute in this matter. Rabbi Yehuda Amar. Rabbi Yehuda said, Mi shel ben, that it comes from the son's expense. Rab Nosson bar Oshia Omer, Rab Nosson, the son of Oshia, said, Mi shel av, that it comes from the father's expense. The father needs to pay for the honor that the son is giving him, right? The father needs to pay for that expense, right? Is the son required to pay for his parents' needs out of his own pocket, or is he merely required to expend the effort to see that their needs are met? Okay, and it comes from the parents' expense. So now, according to Rav Yehuda, who says that it comes from the son, he says, however, even according to Rav Yehuda, this obligation applies only when the father has no money of his own with which to provide for himself. Meaning, if the father has money, the father should pay for that honor that the son is giving him. Meaning, not that he should pay for the honor, but he should pay for the expense of the child honoring the father. So if the child is feeding his father, the father should pay for that food, right? The son has to put in the effort, but it doesn't have to be at his own expense, at his own financial expense. It has to be of his effort expense. It has to be of his time expense, but not of his financial expense. Now, according to the second view, which is that the father has to pay for it, according to this view, even if the father does not have any money to support himself, the mitzvah of honoring one's father does not obligate a son to support his father out of his own funds. However, there is a mitzvah to give charity to any indigent person. This mitzvah, with the specification delineated in Yoredeya, in the Shulchan Aruch, would obligate the son to assist his father monetarily, right? And we know that the Talmud, the Torah requires us to give charity. And our sages teach us that that obligation for charity goes first to your own flesh and blood. It goes to your own family. It goes to your father and mother. It goes to your children. It goes to your own before it goes to others. So as much as we might think that a person is not obligated to expend their own finances to honor their father or mother, right? But if the father doesn't have, you still have the obligation of tzedakah, of charity. And as such, the primary obligation would be with your tzedakah to your own family, to your own flesh and blood. And of course, that would include a father and mother. Okay? The ruling is issued. Oru le Rabbanan l'Rav Yirmiyah v'Amr le livrei de Rav Yirmiyah. The rabbis rendered a decision to Rav Yirmiyah, and some say it was to Rav Yirmiyah's son, Kiman da Amr Mishal Av, in accordance with the one who says that it is from the father's assets that the child needs to honor the parent. The parent. Okay? That means this is a definitive ruling, right? That it goes from, means the obligation, honor your father and mother, is Mishel Av. It has to come from the father's expense, for the father's financial abilities. And if the father doesn't have, then obviously there's an extra mitzvah for the child to to give his own tzedakah towards his father. Okay, any questions? Dave, it looks like you're getting excited about a question. Dave, you want to unmute?
He might be on the phone with someone.
Oh, okay. So, because I only see the top of his head, so, you never know. Okay, so either
Rabbi,
way,
I'm sorry. I was doing something for work. I apologize.
okay, no problem, no problem. I know this is a very special time for you. Talmud study always brings in those phone calls because the Yetzer Hara,
It does. I know it does.
he cannot handle that David is learning Torah. He cannot because he knows how holy you are. He says,
Oh, yeah.
"Uh-oh, if David's going to learn Torah, what's going to happen?
I'm so
Right?
holy. You should see
He's
my
going to
clothes.
continue to be so holy." So when he
Yeah.
says, he's like, "Oh, David's learning. Let's send him some phone calls. Let's send him some business."
Yeah,
so
it's
that
like
it distracts him
it's
from Torah study."
nonstop this morning. Sorry.
You are, thank God, Baruch Hashem. Hashem should continue to bless your ways. So the Gemara challenges this ruling, though. Okay, the Gemara challenges Meisave. They challenge this from a different brisa, and it says Nemar Kabed Esavicha v'Esemecha. It says, it's stated in the Torah that honor your father and mother. V'Nemar, and it also says Kabed es Hashem mehoncha. Right? We know that we bring a parallel when there are two verses that have the same word. Right? Now let's see the words, okay? It says, Kabed es avicha v'esimecha, honor your father and mother. And it also says, Kabed es Hashem mehoncha, honor God from your fortune. Whoa, 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 whoa. Right? What's the Talmud going to say now? From the similar formulation of the two verses, it can be inferred that mal halon b'chesron kis, just as they're honoring God, involves a loss of my own financial fortune, means expend your own money in your honor of God. So too, afkan b'chesron kis. Also here, honoring one's parents should involve their own expending their fortune on their parents. Why? Because we take these two words, kabed and kabed, from one being honor your father and mother, the other being honor God. And when we say the word honor God, it says from your fortune. So too, the same word links the two, that when you honor your parents, it should be from your own fortune. It should be from your own money, from your own financial expenses. The amris mishel av, but if you say that only the father's assets need be used to provide his needs, my nafka lemine. What is the difference to the son? Meaning, that is, what financial loss does the son incur? So if we are trying to bring this parallel, right, that we say. As we say throughout the Torah, every time we use a similar word, there is a link. There's a reason why it uses the similar wording to teach you from one to the other. So it's very simple that if over here the word kabed tells us very clearly it should be from your own fortune, over here where it doesn't tell you where it comes from, where that honor comes from, it should be the same way over here. It's from your own expense. It should be over there from your own expense. So the Gemara answers, right? It's a good question, right? You appreciate the question. That means we don't take just simple statements in the Talmud like, oh, well, okay, I guess it's so. No. If you realize there was something odd that we saw in the Talmud just before, and that is they just gave a ruling. Whoa, what do you mean just a ruling? Based on what do you give a ruling? And we know we have to be critical, right, of a statement like that in the Talmud, because we always say, show me the proof, right? Show me the proof, right? We always say that, show me the proof. And if you don't have proof, it's not valid. That's what the whole Talmud is based on. That's what the whole Torah is based on. So how can the Talmud just give us a decision? Oh, this is what we decided. It's the halachas like this. Why? Bring me some proof here. And that's why the Talmud says, no, you're not getting away with just telling me, well, we made a decision, right? The powers that be, right? We got it. No, that's not the way it works. You have to bring me proof for it. So the Gemara answers, Levitul Malacha. The son could lose money because of disruption of his work, right? When it says, right, although one might not be required to spend money to honor his parents, the mitzvah could still result in a financial loss since he must at times interrupt his work to care for his parents. So there's a difference, our sages are telling us, between spending money and losing money. In the sense that if a person says, okay, I need to travel now to go to my parents to visit them, so there's an expense involved. What's the expense? I have to pay for a flight. I have to pay for a rental car. I have to pay for okay, that the parents have to pay. But I'm missing time for my job. Well, the loss that you have from not making income, that is your own expense. And that we learn, honor your father from your own expense. It means the money that you lose in taking care of your parents, that is something you have to take. And that's what we learn from that verse. Okay? So now the Gemara gives offers a proof to that. The Gemara offers a proof. Tashma, come and let's learn the answer from a brisa. Beis achim, two brothers, shnei shutfim, two partners, ha'avu bno, the father and his son, harav v'hatalmud, and a teacher and his disciple. These are partnerships. Okay? Podin zel lozeh maser sheni. They may all redeem maser sheni, produce, from each other. What does that mean? Let's see what it means. Produce grown in the land of Israel must be tithed. During the first, second, fourth, and fifth years of every 7-year Shemitah cycle, one must separate Maser Sheni from his crops. Again, the first, second, fourth, and fifth year of a 7-year cycle, you must take the Maser Sheni from the crops. You have to take a portion of your crops. The Maser Sheni produce must be either eaten in Jerusalem or redeemed with money that is taken there to purchase food in Jerusalem. If it is redeemed by the owner himself, he must add 25% surcharge to the price of the produce. If another person redeems it, he does not add any surcharge. Okay? Now, the Brisa teaches that even if the redeemer is closely related to the owner of the produce, he does not have to add a surcharge. For example, we do not say that since a son loves his father and normally supplies his food, redeeming his father's produce would be tantamount to redeeming produce of his own and would require a surcharge. No, it doesn't. It has to be actually yours to require that extra surcharge. Okay, so now, and also they may feed each other maaser ani produce, which is on the 3rd and 6th year of the Shemitah cycle, because those are the two we left out, right? 1, 2, 4, and 5. But what's about 3 and 6, right? On the 3rd and 6th year of the cycle, maaser ani replaces maaser sheni. Maaser ani is maaser, which is tithed to the poor, right? And maaser ani is given to the poor. The Brisa teaches that a son may give maaser ani produce to his father if the father is poor enough to qualify for it. It is permitted even though the son cares about his father's welfare as much as his own and would provide food for his father out of his own pocket if the maaser ani was not available. Right? The same explanation, of course, applies to the other relationships listed in the Brisa. To a rabbi, to his own teacher, you would give his maaser if the rabbi was needy, right? He would give the same maaser to his. So too he can give maaser ani to the father or to the teacher, to the Rebbe. V'im amris mishel ben. But if you say a father is supported from the son's assets, and how may the son give the maaser to his father, right? How does he give it to his father? He's supporting his father anyway. The son would be found to be paying his personal debt to the poor people out of the funds of the poor. Meaning like this, how can you say that a son who anyway supports his father can give his portion that goes to the poor people to his father? You would be giving to your father anyway. And now you're just taking away funds from poor people that you would have given to other poor people. So how can the son do that? The Gemara says, the Gemara refutes the proof, lo tzricha leha'adafa. No, the Brisa is needed to teach that for the father's excess needs, one may use maser ani. You may do that. And there is an idea that there is a preference, right? You give preferential treatment to your close family members, right? You have a poor family member. By the way, there also goes to Aniye Ircha Kodmim. First goes your own flesh and blood, your own family. Then goes to the people of your city. And then goes to the people of Jerusalem. Right? So if you're wondering whether or not you should give your legacy gift to Tulane University, right? Because that's your alma mater, right? Versus giving to your own city, to your own people in your own city comes first, right? Comes first. Jerusalem is considered your own city because every soul is from Jerusalem, which is why we consider it, our sages teach us that Jerusalem is considered like your own hometown, everyone's hometown, which is why, by the way, very interestingly, when we go to Jerusalem, and it really is a remarkable experience. For those of you who haven't been yet, I look forward to taking you as soon as COVID's over, bli neder, without promise. We're doing a trip to Israel, okay? We're doing a trip to Israel, and we're all going to go together. And it's amazing that as soon as we reach the hills of Jerusalem, people start crying. And when people go to the Kotel, people start crying again. And it's like, what in the world is going on to me? You ever go like, Grand Canyon, let's start crying? No, you don't have that. Oh my goodness, I'm going to see the geysers in Yellowstone National Park. Let's go cry, right? I'm feeling all emotional, right? We don't see that anywhere else in the world. But going up the hills to Jerusalem, people get all emotional. They start crying. I've seen this hundreds of times. Why is it? You know why? Because our sages tell us that the source of every soul comes from Jerusalem. The connection to the gates of heaven comes from the Temple Mount. When we pray, what do? I'm right now facing Jerusalem, by the way. And right above my desk, I have a picture of the Western Wall. Right over here above my desk. Why? Because our mind, we're wired. Wherever you are in the world, face Jerusalem when you pray. Right? When you pray, if you don't know, the halacha tells us, if you don't know what direction, you're lost someplace out in the middle of Texas. You're in the middle of hill country. Oh my goodness, I have no idea where west is. I didn't pay attention to where the sunset is, because you always look where sunset is in the opposite direction, is towards Jerusalem. So you don't know. So the Talmud says, and the halacha rules this, that just concentrate that you're facing Jerusalem. Have in mind to be facing Jerusalem. Because that is all of our prayers come together, go on a rocket ship to Jerusalem and up to the heavens. That's the source of our soul, comes down to this world through Jerusalem. And Jerusalem to the Temple Mount. It's interesting that people from India pray to the west. They pray towards Jerusalem. And people in Russia pray to the southwest, because that's where Israel is relative to, right? Amazing that wherever a Jew is, we're always facing Jerusalem. We're always facing our home, because that's the home of our soul. Now it's interesting that we just mentioned that a person needs to bring his fruits to Jerusalem. I mean, come on, really? It's not that many fruit. It's the first of the fruit that you bring to Jerusalem. For what purpose? And not only that, if you're a wealthy person, you'd bring it in a gold basket. If you're a simple person, you'd bring it in a reed basket, a simple reed basket. Well, what's that whole idea? You got to travel all the way from northern Israel, wherever you are. You're traveling all the way to Jerusalem. For what? And what would happen? The Kohen would come out and greet you. It's like, wow, it's so great to see the Marbins. It's so great to see the Schreibers. And it's so great to see all my, right? You guys are coming to Jerusalem to bring those fruits. For what? Because you're saying thank you to Hashem. That's how cherished a thank you is by the Almighty. He says, my children are coming to me to say thank you with their first of their fruit, which is their favorite. Right? Imagine, I remember my children, they come home every year with the same ridiculous project. Okay? They're planting a tree. And they come with this little disposable cup. Okay? And in the cup is a little bit of dirt. And they were told by their teacher that there's a plant in there and the plant is going to grow. And we have to water it, a little drop. And then when the buds come out, they get so excited, like, wow, it's growing, it's amazing. It really is remarkable that you plant something and it grows. Imagine now when the fruits come out and you can pick your fruit. You're like, I'm so excited. I can take my fruit and I can eat it now. Look at all the hard work I put in. Look at all the efforts. Look at what I've done. Stop right there. Don't forget who it came from. Don't forget who gave it to you. You're so excited to taking your first bite. No. Your most cherished possession now is those first fruits. You're so excited. No. Take that excitement and focus it on the Almighty. Bring it to Jerusalem, put it in a beautiful basket, and bring it. God doesn't say give it away. Eat it in Jerusalem. Come close to me. Show me that we're in a relationship here. And that is it's such a magnificent idea that the Torah tells us in last week's Torah portion. Bring it to Jerusalem. Bring that relationship closer. It's an unbelievable, a remarkable gift that the Almighty is giving us. Okay, so now let's continue. What does the Talmud says? What does the Talmud say? The Gemara objects to the refutation. If so, that the Bryce is referring to the father's extra requirements. Hainu dekatani Allah, right? This following statement, which was taught to elaborate on the Bryce, is difficult. Amar Rav Yehuda said, Tavo me'era lemishamachil es aviv maser sheni. A curse should befall one who feeds his father maser ani. But if the Brisa refers to excess needs, what difference is there if he gives it to his father when he qualifies for it? Extra, not extra, what does it make a difference? He's giving it to his father. And a person, according to Rav Yehuda, is cursed if he gives his father from the Maser Ani. The Gemara replies, Afilu hachi zila be milsa. Nevertheless, it is a disgraceful thing to use Maser for the needs of one's own father. Right? We don't give Maaser to one's own father. If someone has the means to provide for his father from his own funds, it is improper to fulfill the obligation of charity and Maaser Ani by aiding his father. However, if a person has limited resources, it is preferable to fulfill his obligation of charity and Maaser Ani and the Maaser, the tithe to the poor, by helping his indigent father, rather than by helping a stranger. Okay, so always the primary responsibility is to our family members, to our father, to our child, to our close relative, before others. Now the Talmud continues. The Gemara makes another attempt to prove whose assets are used to provide the father's needs. Tashma, come, let's learn a brisa. Shalu es Rabbi Eliezer. They asked Rabbi Eliezer, Ad heichon kibud avaim. To what extent is one obligated to honor their father and mother? Amar luhu, he said to them, Kadei sheyitol arnaki v'yizurkenu layam b'fanav ve'eno machlimo. To the point that if the father takes the son's wallet and throws it into the sea in his son's presence, the son does not embarrass him, or the father's wallet. Okay? If the father takes a wallet filled with money, throws it into the sea in front of his son, and the son doesn't embarrass his father for it. But if you say that only the father's assets need be used to provide his needs, what is the difference to the son? Right? So, since the father's needs are supplied from his own assets, Rev Eliezer must be referring to the father's disposing of his wallet, of his own wallet. The son would not be required to allow his own wallet to be thrown into the sea. That being the case, why should the son care enough to think of embarrassing his father? Okay, so the Gemara refutes the proof. The Brisa refers to the potential heir, right? He is going to be the inheritor of his father's estate, right? Who is adversely affected by any loss incurred by his father. So if the father is going to throw away his money, the son is losing out. So the child now won't be receiving it, and by him not denigrating his father or embarrassing his father, that would be the fulfillment of the mitzvah. The Gemara records such an observance of honoring the father. V'chi ha de Rabbi bar Rav Huna. And this is similar to that which occurred to Rabbi bar Rav Huna. The Rav Huna kara shiroe be'anpei Rabbi berei. For Rav Huna once tore silks in the presence of Rabbi, his son. Saying to himself, let me see if he gets angry or if he does not get angry. Right? So he was testing his son. Rav Huna wanted to test his son in order to guide him in the observance of the mitzvah to honor one's father. He says, I'm going to destroy these silks and see if my son gets upset. And the mitzvah is not to get upset at one's parent. The Gemara questions Rav Huna's conduct. But perhaps Rabbah would have gotten angry, and his father Rav Huna would thereby be violating the biblical prohibition: before a blind man you shall not place a stumbling block. Right? What's the commandment? Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. Meaning, don't do something to someone that they are not expecting as a stumbling block in front of them, literally a stumbling block. Right? So the Gemara answers the machale likare. Rav Huna waived the honor due to him. Right? He said, I don't want my son to fall, and I'm forgiving my own, foregoing my own honor. And if my son embarrasses me or says something to me, I forgive him, meaning in advance, I'm giving up on my own honor. Okay. But now there's another biblical commandment, is not to waste. Not to waste. Right? By the way, I'll give you the classic example of not wasting. Electricity. If you have electricity on in your house, in a room that's not being used, right? You're wasting. That's a biblical prohibition. Wasting food is a biblical prohibition. Right? Wasting time, obviously, is even more of a biblical prohibition. But not to waste. Waste is a prohibition in the Torah. Right? So the Gemara answers, the avad le bipumyone. He did it along the seams which could be restitched. So he didn't destroy the garment, he just tore it along the seams, and he did it again. He did it in front of his son to see that his son won't express anger towards the father. The Gemara objects. Dilma mishum hachi lo rasach. Maybe he didn't get angry, and that's because we saw that it was torn along the seam. Perhaps that was the reason that Rabbi did not get angry at what his father was doing. So what did the test prove? The Gemara answers, the avad le b'shas rischei. He did it at a time of Rabba's anger. And he wanted to see, right, there are 4 types of capital punishment. No, sorry, that's the wrong commentary here, on the wrong thing. Since Rabba was upset over some other matter, he would not notice that Rav Huna was tearing the silks only along the seams, right? It was therefore a legitimate test of that Rabbah tested, that Rabbah was being tested here by his father. Okay. Now, what's another thing that we see here? We see that when someone's angry, they don't pay attention to details. When someone's angry, they don't see the nuances. They're so angry, they're so flustered, they're just like everything is terrible, or everything is maddening, or everything is and that is something that a person obviously needs to be very, very careful about. If a person's in a moment of anger, a moment of distress, so we have to contain ourselves, hold ourselves. Don't click send. Take it easy. Okay. Don't make that phone call when you're angry. Okay. Any questions so far before we move on to the next little piece here? Okay. The Gemara now continues 32a in the middle of the page. The Gemara cites a dialogue between Rabbi Cheskel and his son, which is recorded here because it leads to a discussion about how a child is supposed to correct his parent should his parent err. Okay, so if a parent makes a mistake, a child has to be very, very careful about how they correct their parent. Right? Because if you do it in the wrong way, you're possibly defaming them or embarrassing them, etc., etc. Masne le Rabbi Cheskel le Rami Berei. Rabbi Cheskel taught his son Rami a Mishnah from Tractate Sanhedrin in the following manner: Hanisrafim baniskolin, the criminals condemned to be burned, became mixed in a group of criminals condemned to be stoned, so that it cannot be ascertained who is liable to burning and who is to stoning. Rabbi Shimon says, Yadonu b'skilo sha'asreifa chamura. They should all be subjected to stoning because burning is more severe than stoning. So imagine this. You have two groups of criminals. One is a group of criminals that were supposed to be punished by burning. Right? Now we know there are four, this is the commentary that we were talking about earlier. There are four different types of capital punishment in the Torah. Anybody know what they are? Skila, Sreifa, Hereg, and Chenek. Okay? Four different types. Number one, Skila is stoning. Sreifa is burning. Now, I'll tell you what each one means. It's a little frightening. Hereg is decapitation, and Chenek is strangulation. Okay, these are the four types of capital punishments in the Torah. Okay, let's talk about stoning. Stoning is it's called stoning, but really the process starts is that the person who is the convicted felon, right, is pushed off a platform which is 3 times their height. Because what happens if they're pushed off the platform at 3 times their height? They will fall on their head. And that should kill them. Well, if it doesn't, what do? And who, by the way, pushes them off? The court doesn't execute. You know who executes? The witnesses.
Oh.
Okay? The reason the witnesses are the ones who execute is to make it very, very clear that you have to be 100% certain of what you're saying, because you are going to be putting this person to death. Okay? He's not going to say, well, I think I had a hunch. No. And by the way, the Bet Din, the court, is very meticulous in their interrogation of the witnesses. They are very, very meticulous, and only if God wills it, then it will happen. If God doesn't will it to happen in the hands of another man, God will make it that something else, some other tragedy happens to that person, and they get their life taken that way, right? Not by the means of another person. So, very interestingly, though, that the witnesses push the individual off the ledge from his waist, both of them together. One is primary, the other one is behind him. And then, if he still doesn't die, they take an enormous boulder, and the one who is the secondary pusher is now the primary dropper, and they drop it on him. If he still doesn't die, then all of the people, all of the Jewish people are commanded to stone the individual. Oh my goodness, I think we frightened Howard. He ran away. Okay? We need to get him back here. But that is the first one. The second is sreifa. Sreifa is that they don't light him on fire. What they do is they would pour burning lead down his throat, and there's only one individual who would get this. Only one individual who gets this type of burning, right? And that is, okay, we'll talk about it when we get there, okay? But each one of these crimes that were done are given very specifically for specific situations. It's not just randomly what they pick, right? The Torah guides us what happens to each individual for their specific sin. The other is hereg, decapitation, which is obvious. And the last is chenek, is strangulation, again done by the witnesses, where the witnesses are the ones who pull the string and strangulate the individual. Okay, a little bit morbid, a little bit frightening, right? And these are not things that happen on a regular basis. These are, our sages tell us that if a court killed a person once in 70 years, it was considered a murderous court. Okay, that's how infrequent it was. Now, so another opinion in that same piece of Talmud says, well, if it's less than once in 70 years, it's a murderous court because there are criminals running around the streets. So for a different reason, there's no law, right? So that's another perspective. But either way, the Talmud now continues and says this version of the Mishnah's text is questioned. Amalei Rav Yehuda Berei upon. Sorry. Okay, so now what happens if you have two different groups? You have a group of people that they were supposed to be put to death by burning. You have another group that was supposed to be put to death by stoning. Okay, and now they got all mixed up, and you don't know who's what, right? It's like, milk and meat. Like, how do you separate the two? So according to one opinion, you should give the more lenient death. The more lenient. Why? Anybody know why? Because it's an easier death for them. You should give him the easier one. And this is what Rabbi Cheskel was teaching his son. He was teaching him this Mishnah. Okay? So he says now, Amalei Rav Yehuda Berei, Rav Yehuda said, upon hearing his father's teaching, Rav Yehuda said to his father, Abba, lo tasnaya hachi, right? Lo tisnaya hachi, right? Do not teach the Mishnah like this, because you're teaching it wrong, right? And he says, your version of the Mishnah's text, which implies that the mixed group consists mostly of criminals condemned to stoning, gives rise to the following difficulty. My irei streifa chamura. Why does Rav Shimon say that the reason the entire group is sentenced to stoning is that burning is more severe than stoning? Typically, derubin is skalaninu. Say that the reason they get the stoning is not because it's more lenient, but rather because it's the majority of people. And because the majority is deserving of this death, that's why all of them get it. But not because it's more lenient. And the idea here is that we're seeing how how a child is correcting his father. Okay? So Rabbi Yehuda therefore offers a different version of the text. Okay? Either way, after this discussion between Rabbi Yehuda and his father, I'm just moving a little bit further, right? Shmuel rebuked Rabbi Yehuda for the manner in which he corrected his father. Okay? Amrle Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shmuel said to Rav Yehuda, Shinino lo temo leila avuchachi. Sharp one. Do not talk to your father like that. Titania, for it has been taught in the Brisa, Harei Shahaya Av Oved Over al Divrei Torah, one whose father was violating a Torah law. Al Yomar Lo, he should not tell his father, Abba Avart al Divrei Torah, father, you violated the laws of the Torah. Ela Omer Lo, but rather he should say to him, Abba Kach Kasuv Batorah. Rather he should tell his father, such and such is written in the Torah. Don't reprimand his action, but rather tell him what is written in the Torah. Initially, the Gemara understands the Brisa's concluding statement as a sarcastic rebuke. Is what you are doing written in the Torah? Like, is that what the Torah says? No, so then you shouldn't be doing it. You shouldn't be sarcastic, right? Kach kasu b'Torah is such and such written in the Torah, right? So ure kamitzarle, causing the father to be distressed and to be in pain by wrongly fulfilling or contradicting the ways of the Torah. The Gemara answers, Ella Amarlo, rather the son should say to his father, Aber mikra kasav b'Torah kach. Father, the following verse is written in the Torah, and then quote the verse that prohibits the father's behavior. The son makes no direct connection between the verse and the father's misdeed. Rather, he allows the father to deduce for himself that he has made a mistake. Okay? The Gemara now continues to talk about the way in which a son honors his father and whether or not the father is allowed to forgive or forgo his own honor. And next week, though, I want to do a different piece of Talmud talking about Rosh Hashanah, because we will be just a few hours before the day of judgment, before we stand in front of the Almighty, and I look forward to learning that with all together next week, God willing, same time, same place. My dear friends, have a remarkable Shabbos. To all of our friends nobody's online because we're recording it here locally. So to our friends who are watching this on YouTube or Facebook, thank you very much for joining us. Thinking Talmudist every Friday at 12 o'clock, and we're grateful that you joined us this week. To those of you who are